So this is 0330 hours GMT on Sunday the 18th of December 2020. 22, not 20. That was a slip of the tongue. This is the 0330 hours GMT, London, UK, Sunday the 18th of December 2022. This is the Baby Angel Geronimo Editions, KHOODEELAAR television channel. Created, researched, and edited by me, Muhammad Haque. And this is on the top left of the screen that you can definitely see is the image of Baby Angel Geronimo. Now there is a small image reduced from the bigger one. The Baby Angel Geronimo is the perfect witness to all the crimes and criminality, depravity, lying, cruelty being perpetrated by the various agencies of the UK state. Baby Angel Geronimo is the perfect witness to the disgusting injustice, George Injustice Eustace, whose criminal as MP was the so-called Secretary of State in place at the DEFRA, where the main bureaucratic criminal cooking up the lies against Baby Angel Geronimo has been Christine Evilness, not Christian Middle Miss, but she's Evilness. And criminal Boris Johnson, congenital liar, is being promoted by the latest conservative appointed chairman of the BBC, Richard Sharp, as summarized in the Private Eye on page 17 of the Private Eye, edition number 1588. Fortnight, is it fortnight? It doesn't look like fortnight. 16th of the issue number, let's say, 1588, covering the date 16th of December 2022 to 5th of January 2023. Now, here is the piece under the media news. This item is sharp words. In a combative Sunday Times interview, BBC chairman Richard Sharp emphasized that his main mission, along with Director General Tim Davie, is to give the corporation, that is the BBC, a reputation for absolute political impartiality. So the DO will presumably take a severe view of the senior BBC leader, who used a recent newspaper conversation to speak fondly of friend and former colleague Rishi Sunak, within quotes, a great details man, and to predict that another friend, the disgraced Boris Johnson, he loves the BBC, will return to number 10. I wouldn't count him out. I don't think he's done, unquote. Says Private Eye, if Davy wants to find his chummy advocate of past, present, and maybe even future Tory prime ministers and remind him of his responsibilities to impartiality, he, Davies, should head for the chairman's office, with the above quotes highlighted from the Sunday Times of the 3rd of December. Now, no wonder that the BBC did not report on the criminal attacks, defamation, demonization, and lies perpetrated by DEFRA and aided and abetted and endorsed by the criminal Boris Johnson against the baby angel Geronimo. And there is not one single Fleet Street outlet or broadcasting counterpart that has taken up the cause of the unfairly, criminally, cruelly targeted victims of satanic lies as practiced and perpetrated by the sons of Satan and the daughters of Satan, as predicted in the Surah Al-Isra in the Holy Quran. So this is the KHOODEELAAR television channel, broadcasting under the general banner of baby angel Geronimo as being the world's most perfect, innocent witness to the depravity, the corruption, criminality, the satanic personalities of the British state and its various agencies. Now, on the question of the media, there was in Stratford, in London, East London, there was a supporters meeting, which was a very strange affair. A supporters meeting for an attempt calling itself Newham Voices. Newham Voices is associated with somebody I had known 31 years ago at the East End News. East End News was based at the Victoria Park Square, just above the Bethnal Green Underground Station, off the Roman Road, at the beginning of the Roman Road going east. And we had that experiment, East End News. I joined it in good faith out of solidarity because I actually believed in good faith that the claim behind the setting up of the Eastern News was a truthful one. That was in December 1980 when the announcement was made, and I took that in good faith. Remember, 19th of December is when the Odikar weekly was published. So 19th of December will be tomorrow, Monday the 19th. So we shall be going over the last many years since the publication of the Odikar weekly from 15 New Road, London E11HE, by my editorship and typed by Azizul Haque, who is no longer around. He typed it by hand typed by hand manually on a very obsolete and very difficult to handle Bangla script carrying typewriter. So we shall be talking more about the Odikar weekly tomorrow in the editions of the KHOODEELAAR television channel on the 19th of December 2022. Now, I had publicized the initiative East End News in good faith. As a member of the NUJ a few years ago, previously, I thought that it was a good initiative, Eastern News. And I thought in good faith that the Eastern News would be a truthful and honest and courageous and objective counter to the 100-plus-year-old title, The East London Advertiser. Now, at that time, I had not yet renamed the East London Advertiser the East London Idiotizer, which is what I have done since then. Idiot is a verb transitive. So instead of advertising, it's idiotizing the readers, which is consistent with the Little Englander mentality. Now, when I joined the group, it was a non-profit initiative, the Eastern News. In good faith, as I said, I found myself faced with the complete racist criminal crook, Mike Jemson, whose name I have edited to sound and read Mike Jemshit. Mike Jemshit is one of the British racists who has been doing business in Japan and other southeastern targeted areas, claiming to be a British media expert under the criminal banner, poser banner called Presswise from Bristol. This criminal is a complete and utter fraud. So I found him there, but that was before I didn't know anything about Mike Jemshit, except that this crook would bike from Wapping northwards and sometimes see me walking in New Road, and he had brief conversations with me. Not more than 2 or 3 conversations in all. And that was about the East London Advertiser. At that time, I was still calling it East London Advertiser. And he said that he agreed with what I said about the East London Advertiser not being a proper newspaper, etc., etc. So on that basis, I faced, that was then in January, February 1981, I joined the East End News, supposedly aimed to counter the East London Advertiser. It soon transpired that it was set up by Jake Eccleston, another racist from the National Union of Journalists. Eccleston, the racist criminal, at the NUJ was, I think, General Secretary of the NUJ. And then I found this another NUJ activist called Aidan White. And of course, Mike Jemshit. Now, together, they had set up this thing, apparently, according to them, a rebellion against what they now call the NUJ establishment. Whatever the details, I didn't go into. But when you got into the kind of so-called editorial collective discussion meetings, I found that I was alone. I was alone against about 20 morons, racists, and idiots. None of them had anything to do with the real concerns that I had to really stop the East London Advertiser. They didn't care less. And I shall continue to add to the chronicle of the way these criminals behaved. And this led to the effective closure of the project East End News. Now back to Saturday, the 17th of December 2022. I arrived at the Stratford Library, which is the library of the London Borough of Newham Council, at 3 The Grove, which is opposite the Wilkinson shop and not far from the Broadway, Stratford Broadway, Stratford Centre, etc., etc. And I had no idea, how chilling the intellectual atmosphere would be. Remember what I'm saying, the intellectual atmosphere. Because only about 3 weeks previously, I had picked up for the first time a copy of the Newham Voices at the Sainsbury's while I was buying the newspapers. I buy the newspapers on average about £15 a day. So this one was not paid for, it was a free one. So I picked it up and I read this and I came across the name Adrian White. That rang the bell. I thought, well, that sounds like I know this name. Whether it's the same Adrian White that was the Eastern News or not, I didn't know at the time. So when I went there to the library on the 17th of December 2022 and I saw this man, obviously, that many years later, he looked different. He was looking quite different. He was not youthful anymore. But I said I felt that I was familiar with his face. And he said, I'm familiar with your face as well, or words to that effect. And then I said, what is your name? He said, Aidan White. So I left it there at that moment. I only asked him about the Eastern News after the event. And he confirmed that he was at the Eastern News. And he remembered Mike Jameson. And I didn't comment on Jameson because to comment on Jameson would be to really disappoint him even further. Anyway, in between the 2 hours, they allocated 2 hours from 10 o'clock to 12 for a discussion of supporters of the Newham Voices, that is in the plural. The chilling intellectual atmosphere is a reference to the fact that this wasn't really a gathering of supporters. It was really a gathering of the people who were already involved with the Newham Voices. That is what I read from the list of people that Adrian White called to speak. And Adrian White did something that the criminal racist cunt, Helena Kennedy, now KC, the Scottish-born racist criminal cunt who has been doing business on the side as a Labour PRS. That cunt had winked at me in the lift in 1996 when I was going to attend a gathering. That was, remember, the year before the 1997 general election. The gathering was called to discuss civil liberties and so on and so on. When I got into the lift, there was this only other person, this Helena Kennedy, the cunt. I knew the face from the media. And she brazenly winked at me. I couldn't understand why she winked at me. Because this cunt is younger than me, and the cunt should never have done that because I never had any personal contact with her, let alone given her any impression that I would appreciate her winking at me. This was a very clear, brazen, sexual wink. So I left it there. I didn't raise any objection. By the time we arrived at the venue, I found that she was the chair of the thing. It was an all-white thing. There was hardly any African or Asian person there. And when the proceeding went on, I raised my hand. And I raised my hand. And I raised my hand. And I raised my hand and she ignored me every single time until I protested. And guess what? The racist cunt said exactly what the racist Des Wilson had said at the St. Bride's Club of Fleet Street. That was about 10 years previously. When the racist criminal Des Wilson had said, I helped your people. The fucker had no idea who my people were, the fucking racist cunt. He was talking about shelter and helping people with housing. None of my relations existed anywhere near his reach, and that he didn't need any help from him. So this cunt, Helena Kennedy, said, I have been helping minorities, and words to that effect. And all the white ones, the place was completely packed with white participants. They ignored the exchange and they ignored my protests and they didn't object to her behavior, which was more brazen than Suzanne Hussey behaved towards Ngoni Fulani. So this is what racists on the so-called left are like. And if Keir Starmer, the criminal, gets anywhere near the power, that he would have a parade of the racist cunt, Helena Kennedy and other equally criminal shits. Back to Stratford and 17th of December 2022. By the time the discussion went kind of active, Ruxana Fiaz, who had made an appearance, and I'll come to that in a minute, had left. And Aidan White gave a spiel, and then many people spoke and he interacted with them. But he ignored me. I kept raising my hand and he kept ignoring me. Even against the background of having a conversation with me, in which he acknowledged, at least he acknowledged having known my face. Now, Aidan White is not, is not justified in just saying he knows my face. I am one of the most familiar faces of campaigners and have been for decades. Anyway, when he ignored me, I eventually had to say, are you kind of trying to ignore me? Words to that effect. And he denied it. But Aidan wasn't telling the truth. And I shall put that in the communication that I shall be writing, which he said I should do. And then there is this man from Council, Newham Council, a man called Winston, of African origin. And he referred to Roxana Fiaz as he introduced her when she spoke, before she left, of course, that she was his boss. Now, Roxana Fiaz would be at least 20 years his junior, if not 30 years his junior, Winston's junior. So it seems that although Newham Voices is presented as an independent, not connected with Newham Council, it is really not the truth. It is very much connected with Newham Council. What happened then? There were ready-made certificates which they had organized for this event, where Roxana Fiaz kept being given this each certificate to hand to one of the Newham Voices recipients. There would have been, at least by my count, my count may be wrong because it's not systematically, scientifically done, about 5 or 6 such certificates. Now, when Aidan White eventually let me speak at all, it wasn't just him. There are people behind me from around the group that started butting in, objecting to me or making comments about what I was saying before I could finish the sentence, and I never was able to finish the sentence. In that process, Winston and Adrian said, I should write an email giving my opinion. Now, what was the point of asking me to do that instead of listening to me? I was the only voice other than their own collective voice. So it was a thoroughly repugnant abuse of the word voices. And Aidan White, when he gave his main speech, shocked me. He said that the Neevam voices shouldn't be about grim news, about homelessness and all the other problems people are having. I was shocked because my key point, which I was stopped from completing, was that Neevam was undemocratic because of the elected mayor system and had all these problems, that Neevam had so many problems that needed a good newspaper. And Adrian White said that didn't want to have too many grim news. And the main audience, on average, I would say, the audience mainly consisted of the group that actually produces these, would be on average over 50. So there was hardly any ordinary identifiable young people, except two very strangely scripted children. Two boys were given the chance to read written scripts about their thoughts and wisdom about the future of the new voices. They were not independent, they were part of the package. So I'll write the thing to Adrian White and Winston. Now, back to Ruxana Fiaz, I could hardly make out what the real sentences she was saying, although I was sitting not far from the place where she stood. I couldn't understand what she was saying. Of course, I could understand itsy bitsy pieces, but I couldn't really understand the complete picture or the substance of what she was saying. So I'll check on the notes and I shall hopefully publish some report about what she said. But essentially, if she was there, then it goes without saying the Newham Voices could not be publishing anything critical about Newham Council. No way. Because if they were critical about the policies that Ruxana Fiaz's administration has been following, she would not have been invited, and she would most certainly not have been invited as the chief guest, which is effectively what she behaved as. And she was given that role when she was given the prepared certificates to hand. I have checked the internet, and I can't find anything so far on the Twitter account run by the Newham Voices. I haven't checked any other of their social platforms. But if and when they publish the pictures, I shall see to what extent they would have censored me, because I was there in the pictures. And if they don't run any pictures, including me, then they would only confirm that they are hostile to anyone who voices a different voice than what they want. And what they want is not about, about the future or the present. It's a kind of default fantasy. It's not a newspaper, it's not a campaigner, and it most certainly doesn't want to upset the local Newham Council. When I raised the point about Newham being the only local council in England or in London that had no real opposition, an Eastern European woman called Katarina, who later told me she had been in Newham for 5 years. I don't know how long she had been in the country altogether. Immediately butted in and interrupted me to say that Barking or some other council was also without any opposition. But that's to completely misunderstand what I was saying. There may have been another council or more than one other council that had no real opposition. But my point about Newham was historic. My point about Newham was that it was unique in many respects. How could I begin to detail what is it now? 46, 1976, 86, 96, 2006, 2016, that is 40 years, and 46 years. I have been actively engaged in events in Newham for 47 years. How could I begin to even tell this woman who was not even born 46 years ago? I mean, how could I tell her the history of Newham and the context and all the party political things that have been going on? Not to mention Kia Hardy. So Aidan White, if he is the same Aidan White, is also at least a former member of the SWP Wonkers. If it is the same Aidan White, a former member of the SWP Wonkers, then it follows that he was talking like a SWP Wonka. How could he say that we don't want to publish grim news? I mean, he is an old age pensioner living in a sheltered accommodation, if I noted it correctly. I mean, what does he know about society? What does he know about Newham? What is happening? And why weren't there young people? There are no young people. There is nothing to do with the schools, nothing to do with the real education on the streets and the gangs and all the other stuff. And when I began to refer to the United Nations, I was very sharply shut down. What I was going on to say was the visit in 2018 by the United Nations rapporteur. So all of those things I shall be contextually updating on in the context of the meeting staged by Aidan White and his chums at the Stratford Library on Saturday, the 17th of December 2022. So, what is happening with the wider kind of scenario? There is a picture on the Newham Council website, which I checked for the first time in a long time, which has Roxana Fiaz and Sadiq Khan in the picture. Now, that picture shows the distance between the two of them. Sadiq Khan literally looks very grim indeed, and Roxana Fiaz looks like she is on the sidelines, trying to reach out to Sadiq Khan, and Sadiq Khan is looking grim. Now, Sadiq Khan is a mental slave of such complete, absolute kind of consistency in his slavery that he would not pay any attention to even Roxana Fiaz, no matter how mentally enslaved she is herself. Because Sadiq Khan is a mental slave of the worst kind of the Labour Party racists. And according to the latest private lie, he is getting back into favor within the Keir Starmer fronted Labour Party regime, Labour Party front bench in the House of Commons. So whatever role Starmer has for Sadiq Khan would gladly perform this slavish task. Now, in the newspaper, the main newspapers, for example, the Financial Times, which costs about twice the price of the Guardian and each of the Guardian, the Times, and the Telegraph. edited in name by a woman called Ruala Khalaf, who is described as a Lebanese born Muslim. There is nothing Muslim about the way that financial crimes, according to her editing, looks at the world. Owned by the Japanese, but she is the editor. She's supposed to be the editor. She doesn't recognize the Muslim world. And it is the Muslims in the world who numerically are being denied the most in every continent. Basic human rights. So we shall be catching up with all of those things in the later editions. This has been 36 minutes long, this one. And we shall be closing this one, ending this one at 36 minutes, just over 36 minutes at 4 or 6 hours GMT.